Hello, welcome to this tutorial on how to polar drift a line in 5 minutes using the PhD software. So this already assumes that you have plugged in PhD and you've set it up and you've at least attained the green cross guiding at some point. The very first couple of times you do this, it's going to take 20 or 30 minutes to wrap your head around what's going on. But then once you've done that a couple of times, you'll be set forever. It's relatively straightforward once you've got the hang of it, and you'll be doing it in under 5 minutes at that point. So consistency is the really important thing here. When you face the mount, for example, I always sit sort of behind the mount looking north since I'm in the northern hemisphere. And I always adjust the mount from that position. So there's actually no need to see Polaris or Sigma Octantis if you're in the south, as long as you can just sort of either eyeball it or just go, oh, I know it's behind that house over there. Just point it in that direction. That'll be good enough. Make sure you do practice, because it's happened to me. I got it right the first time, and so I thought, this is easy. And then the next time it didn't work and I got all confused. So practice is a really good idea here. So first, point the camera and guide scope near the celestial equator opposite the pole, so backwards compared to what you might see on pictures with the scopes pointing north. And most of us are going to be shooting near the equator and meridian anyways. So rough alignment is all you need to start with. Notice I've got the guide camera cable plugged in. The other cables are not plugged in, just to make things clearer in the picture. But with the guide camera plugged in and hanging straight down from the mount, that aligns perfectly with the x-axis of the sensor, so that when it shows up in PhD, the RA is left, right, and DEC is up, down. Now, PhD doesn't care about this at all. It figures it out when it does its calibration. But I've always found it's a nice thing to do. And again, that consistency means that when you're tired or rushed, you're not going to be making mistakes. So the first thing you need to do once you've finished your rough align is to find the star. Make sure of course you're focused, and you first cycle or recycle the camera button so that it refreshes the view of the guide camera. Hit the star so that it auto selects the guide star for you, and then hit the green button and let it start guiding. Now, of course, it's going to immediately jump into calibration mode, and this is perfectly normal, and it usually takes about 2 minutes or so to do this. So just let it do its calibration thing. And once it pops up fully nice and green, you're then ready to go. Click on the Tools menu and click then on the submenu of Drift Align. You do not want to do Polar Drift Align or Static Polar Align, just straight Drift Align. So up pops another window, and it starts you in the azimuth adjustment mode. And if you set up like I showed you earlier on, you're already pointing near the meridian and the equator, just like it says so in the instructions. So you saved yourself a step if you start up this way. So you do that, then you click Drift, and you wait for 15 seconds or so, and you'll see the display clears itself and then starts showing you what's happening, and the red line will start zigzagging its way. The long red dashed line will sway up and down. Don't worry about that. It takes a few seconds for it to settle down until it's going in a more or less steady direction. Now, it could be up, it could be down. If you're reasonably close, you will see this purple circle expand and contract, and it'll slowly settle down as well. If you're way off, the red line will go sharply either down or sharply up. And so at that point, you'll need to make your changes. So this is when you move the mount's azimuth knobs, where my hands are in this image here. Those are the knobs that let you slowly shift in azimuth. So if you've set up like I have, pointing south, you'll find out that if the red line is going slanting down to the right, you'll find that if you tighten with your left hand and loosen with your right hand, and you go about 2 twists of your wrist, and try and bring that star about 90% of the way to the purple circle. If the red line is really steep down, you won't even see a purple circle, and you're way off, and you'll need to pivot the entire mount 5 degrees clockwise. So when you tighten, they just go to it snug. If you tighten really hard, you'll find that when you release it for an adjustment, it tends to jump unpredictably. So if the red is above the line, for my setup like this, in the northern hemisphere, I loosen the left knob and I right tight the right hand knob. And if it's really steepward going up, then you know you're off by quite a bit. Pivot the whole mount counterclockwise by about 5 degrees and retry. Now for the southern hemisphere, you'll probably have to do everything opposite. But don't worry, once you figure it out, you only need to figure it out once. There's half a chance you'll choose the wrong direction. But then once you've figured out which direction you need to do to make it better, then write it down in the notes section so that the next time you run your alignment, the notes will be there to remind you what it is you need to do. So I then, after doing the adjustment, I click on Drift again, and once more wait 20 seconds for the red line to stabilize into a new angle. And hopefully, if you've gone in the right direction, the red line will be shallower and the purple circle will be smaller. If you've gone the wrong way, well, then you'll know you have to flip things around. But as you can see here, the azimuth adjustment notes, I say, if the line is below, then it's left tight and right loose. If the line is above, it's the opposite. So then once it's settled down, you click Adjust again, you move the azimuth knobs, but a little less than you did the time before because you're getting closer. And then click Drift again, wait 20 seconds to see where you end up. And the big thing I recommend here is go with smaller steps and try not to overshoot too much. If you do these wide swings, you'll find that you'll get backlash when you change direction. So it's a lot better to just slowly go in the same direction, just tweak it, and then you're there, and you won't have to worry about the backlash, because the backlash really kind of confuses you as to, well, you go clunk and then you're not really sure if you've moved it a lot or not. So you watch it drift again. The closer you get, the longer you're going to want to wait to see the direction, because as you can see here, the red line squiggled a fair bit in the early parts, and so the dashed red line, which shows you your overall accuracy, will be swinging up and down, and it's just be patient and let it settle down. It always settles down. You just sort of keep on going back and forth to drift, and then adjust, drift, adjust, and then finally it's just like, oh, that's pretty close. And you'll notice that each of these vertical bars is about 25 seconds, so it's not quite 4 minutes to get to the end here. So if you're not drifting very far, you're going to be just fine for 3-minute subs. So just be careful with the numbers here: 4 arc seconds, 8 arc seconds, 12 arc seconds. You can change the scale by clicking on this drop down menu. At the start, you always want to be 16 so you can see where the red line is going. But as you get closer, you might want to drop it in and be a little narrower. So once you've got the azimuth pretty much horizontal like this, then click on the altitude button. So instructions say slew to a location near the equator and the eastern or western horizon. So that means you loosen the main RA clutch and you rotate the whole rig to point relatively low in the west or east. Like if you're 15 degrees up, that's still perfectly fine. It really doesn't matter which side you do, but again, for the sake of consistency, it'll pay big dividends if you always do west or always do east. And then you'll know you'll get no surprises, and it'll be just a replay, and you'll be able to do it really fast the next time. So again here, I've put in my notes. So if you set up the same way I have, it says if the red line is below, then on the altitude, use your left hand and move your thumb up. And you'll see what I mean in the next image. So again, notice how I'm sitting on the same side of the mount as I did before. So essentially facing the polar scope. And then I reach around with my left hand, and when I said thumb up, that is, I turn so that the thumb is going up here. Obviously, if you're right-handed and you feel more comfortable reaching around with your right hand to the other side, then it'll be your thumb down or backwards, if you want to call it that. And here I use thumb up or forwards. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're right-handed or left-handed. It's going to be do the same thing each time, and it'll work. Again, try and move the star 90% of the way to the edge of the purple circle. And as I say here, try not to use clockwise or counterclockwise in your notes, because when you reach around, your hand here with the thumb going up, it's clockwise to you, but if you're on the other side of the mount, it's counterclockwise. So it's too easy to get confused. So that's why I use the terminology thumb up and forward, or down and backwards. That way, especially if it's late at night, you'll find it a lot easier to use that type of direction. Again, click on drift, wait 20 seconds, and hopefully the line is less steep. But always use the same hand. Don't do one hand to tighten and then switch around and use the other hand to loosen. You'll just confuse yourself very quickly. So just repeat and go back to drift, back, and you should see something. Oh, I'm closer here. The purple line's a bit smaller. Again, you're going to have to wait 15-20 seconds, and you'll notice there's the line just sort of steadily goes a bit too high. So obviously I didn't quite listen to my own instructions, and I jumped a little bit too far. And so I'm back to clicking on adjust, and I have to then turn the other way to make the red line come down. And there will be, like I said, a bit of backlash, so you're probably going to have to do this 2 or 3 times to get it just right. And that's why you'll very quickly see why I said it's better to go in small steps than to jump back and forth in larger segments. So click drift, and hopefully you'll get something much closer, and sure enough, there it is, smack on that line. So then just click X to leave the drift align, and you're all done. And so unless you're really obsessive about it, or you're going for much longer subs, then you'll need a bit more precision. But notice here, polar alignment error, 1 arc minute. That's as close as you actually need to get for just about anything you're working with. So, final thoughts here. Slow down. The tendency is to, oh, it's getting dark, I got to get stuff going, I'm going to miss too much, and you just end up making mistakes, rushing, you bump things, you tug on wires, and you find out that you haven't actually tightened the bolt that holds the base down, or that you haven't pushed your tripod down nicely. So what I really suggest is find a full moon night in the backyard, even if you're in the city. And again, if it doesn't matter if you can't even see Polaris, just rough alignment, and then just practice the drift align, and do it again. And as the coach says, oh, do it again. Once more, and deliberately go a little too far and get a sense of how the backlash is a pain in the butt. And so then you just get used to doing the closer and closer with smaller and smaller adjustments. It's important here to know what the setup is in terms of how many arc seconds per pixel. So for example, if you know, oh, I'm shooting with a camera and lens combination that gives me 10 degrees, well, you multiply that out 60 to get arc minutes, another 60 to get arc seconds, divide by the width in pixels of your camera, and that'll give you your arc seconds per pixel. So mine is somewhere around 4 arc seconds per pixel. So that means that if my red line drifts off by 3 arc seconds during a 3-minute exposure, hey, I know that it's never going to show up, that the drift is inside 1 pixel, and I'm going to be fine. If it goes out just a little bit, don't worry about it. And especially if you're looking at the blue line going up and down, zigzagging, as long as it's a brief little zigzag and you've got a 2 or 3 minute sub, it'll never show up on your image. So don't worry about that. And it's okay to dial back. Probably the biggest mistake by relative newcomers is, oh, I've got this tracking mount, I'm going to put an 800 millimeter lens on there, or a 400 with a doubler, and try and get the most out. Somebody on the website or the Facebook page said they could do 4 minutes with no guiding. I'm going to do that too. And you get awful results. So take it easy, dial it back, start at, especially if you can, 100 millimeters, and it's like, oh, if I'm doing fine at 3 minutes, up it to 200 millimeters and try again and see where what your stars start to look like. Or I found on another night, gee, it's really windy. If I put 400 millimeters on there, the stars are going to be moving all over the place. So I'm just going to dial it back, put on a 50 millimeter lens, and not even bother with the guiding, and just sort of forget about it, sit in my chair and look up, and just let the mount go at 50 millimeters. It'll be perfectly fine. Another thing, the experts will say that once you do both your adjustments in azimuth and altitude, you're going to need to go back and redo the azimuth, because the altitude adjustments has shifted the geometry. But I found that if you're doing less than 5 minute subs, you'll never see that type of thing. If you've got a permanent observatory and you're drift aligning, then by all means refine it as much as you can. The other thing I've noted, that any time you shoot near the meridian, it is very similar to your initial setup. So if you happen to see that the red line is separating a bit too much, maybe your mount is sinking into the grass a bit. It's a little soft, so you need to just adjust things a bit. You can actually just quickly hit the stop on the guiding, stop your camera, adjust the azimuth knobs just as if you were drift aligning. You don't actually have to go back into the menu. And then restart your guiding, double check that the red line is now straighter again, and then start your shooting again. I've gotten good enough at this, I can do it all in 15 seconds. And similarly, if you find yourself shooting anywhere near the west or eastern horizon and you see the red line separating again, remember now that you're in altitude mode, and you can fine adjust the altitude mode, and then restart your guiding and shooting again. But the altitude knob tends to be a little jerkier, so go easy on this. And then other things, if you reposition to a new object, rebalance the load, change the lens, it's worth going back and do the actual drift align again. Better safe than sorry. There's nothing worse than having driven out to a dark site for an hour, do all your subs, and then your second object has got trails and stuff because you were rushing too much, or you're tired and you just didn't feel like doing it again. And then you drive the whole hour back, and the next day you look at your stuff and go, I should have taken the 5 minutes just to get it right. And really be hard on yourself on that. It's worth every minute when you sharpen your alignment and take it a little bit more slowly. Final one here is under great skies. Never try out your brand new camera or your new mount, or you're trying something new with PhD tracking or ASI airs or sharp cap or whatever, because you'll just end up wasting a lot of your time getting things to work. I always suggest, especially before the big new moon weekend, 2 weeks before full moon, go out in the backyard and just troubleshoot your mount. Find the gremlins, stamp them out, so that when you do get to a really nice spot, your just setup is normal and everything will work flawlessly. So I hope this has really helped. Good luck, and thanks for watching.